Hi, this is Neil Utash, and I am here to give you my fourth and final fireside chat. This is surrounding spending authority and funding balance. I recently had the privilege of attending the Iowa School Finance workshop that was put on by their information services program, and the main goal of that day was to develop a 5-year projection for the financial health of your school district. I got to attend that with my acting superintendent, Dr. Steve Webner, and interviewed him quite a bit regarding spending authority and funding balance, because this is a topic that I'm not real great at. So borrowed a few pictures and put together this presentation to hopefully help my classmates understand better what the difference is between spending authority and funding balances. The overview of spending authority, they are basically, spending authority is funds, where they come from and what they are spent on is what we're going to talk about. How are schools held accountable for financial performance? What kind of shortfalls impact what fund, and district responses and actions to spending authority. The first picture I borrowed was from the corporation that put this presentation on, and basically just breaks it down into, there's two types of funds. One is spending authority and one is fund balance. With spending authority, you can affect, or the two types of funds. So there's one fund that has various things involved: general fund management, PEPAL, capital projects, debt service, child care, PEARL, and then another type of fund that is there for your activities, your nutrition, your agency as a whole, and various other expenditures that your district might have. Where does the money come from for our funds? This has always been a point of confusion for a lot of people, especially the public. And I think as a superintendent or a future superintendent, you really have to have a good understanding for where money is coming from to fund the different things that are needed in the district. So when you look at this chart, again, I borrowed this from the Iowa group that put this on, and this comes from Des Moines. When you look at the general fund, or the ISIL, which the ISIL is the one thing that my particular school district had actually not voted for, so we were short some of that money, because it is funded by state aid, property taxes, income surtax, and federal funds. That's what all supports our general fund, or our ISIL. So when you don't have the votes for the ISIL, then you lose part of that funding that comes into that general fund in order to pay for staff, curriculum, and energy, which is one of the reasons we've had to have a lot of cuts in our staff over the several years, because we had a lack of the ISL fund, which fortunately enough comes up for vote again here in 2021, but there's not much hope for it going successfully. Looking at the management fund, this is supported strictly by property taxes. This is what helps pay for property and casualty insurance, can also fund our early retirement, workman's comp, various things like that. PEPAL, and this is a voted initiative, which fortunately our district does have. This is funded through your, again, income tax and your property tax. And this is what helps build our buildings, buy new buses, equipment, technology, etc. There's also a bond issue that could come up, debt service, so you can put a bond vote up for athletic facilities, new buildings, and that also comes out of property taxes. So that one's a little bit harder to get, especially like in my district and in surrounding districts, because people aren't so hepped on raising their taxes. The SAVE fund, which is our 1 cent sales tax, this is what my district currently paid for our new facilities at our football stadium through, and a lot of our other projects are paid for through this. This SAVE fund also helps buy equipment, technology, buildings, etc. And then you have the Pearl Fund, which this is one that I'm really the least familiar with. This comes strictly out of our property taxes. It helps pay for parks, playgrounds, and athletic facilities. So where does the money come from? It comes from a lot of different places, but mainly comes from the support of our public. What is the General Fund and Spending Authority? Well, general funds and spending authority are all funds other than the general fund operate on fund balances basis. Example, if you have cash, you can spend it. General fund requires recognition and both spending authority and fund balance basis in order to spend the money. A school district's general fund financial health is measured by the School Budget Review Committee by the level of unspent authority authorized budget or unspent balance. A negative unspent authority authorized budget triggers a workout plan, 2 years or more additional sanctions, phase 2 financial viability audit, potential closure by State Board of Education. So you really can't carry a large unspent authority without consequence. So you really need to make sure that if you're overspending, you have money that will help fund whatever you need in the future or make up for whatever you've overspent. If you look at spending authority as a total picture, you can break it down. And again, this is a borrowed picture that I took from Piper Jaffray, who helped put on the presentation that I went to. Total spending authority can be broken down into 2 subcategories: current year spending authority and then a carried forward spending authority or unspent authorized budget. The current year spending is what helps fund regular program. It's accounted for by head count or cost per pupil. Weighting generated authority, like your special ed, your ELL. Categorical authority, the TSS, the PD, class size, TLC. So these are different things that are in place in the state of Iowa. SBRC grants of spending authority. So again, these are grants related to special ed. Deficit ELL spending, one-time sales tax. And then there's a miscellaneous income. This is from open enrollment and federal funds grants. And then other things that are not state aid or taxes. The funding balance in pictures looks like this. So you have a cash to fund operations. So this is your fund balance. So again, broken into 2 categories: current year cash and carried forward fund balance. The current year cash is made up of current year formula generated through state aid, property taxes, income surtax, instructional support, AEA flow through, everything else that could be federal fund related. And then the cash reserve levy, which is basically property tax, is also part of that current year cash. So when you compare the 2, you can see that both have, one has a beginning fund balance, one has a beginning unspent authority budget. And then with the beginning fund balance, it's really dependent upon your balance of revenues and expenditures to bring that ending fund balance. With the unspent authorized budget, you're looking at current year spending authority minus expenditures to get you your ending unspent authority budget. Are they usually in balance? More often than not, they aren't. All go to where they are due to specific set of decisions Generally, districts tend to have more spending authority than fund balance. Maximized cash reserve levy of 20% tends to limit cash. Also, tax rate considerations can also play a factor. And should they be in balance? Not necessarily. The unspent authority budget is there for a reason. It's to help supplement that lack of funding that might be in place at the governmental level. So, what affects our spending authority? Open enrollment reductions, tuition and reductions, federal fund reductions, grant reductions, ISL state shortfall. Yes, this is something that is not 100%. Our district has suffered through not having that ISL money. And anything that's not one of these is required to be accounted for in general fund and is not property taxes or state aid. Again, affecting spending authority could be your property tax delinquencies or shortfalls, state aid shortfalls, again, not having the ISL, ISL income surtax shortfall, and across-the-board cuts. That could happen at the state level. How do you maximize spending authority? Apply for all spending authority you can get. Apply for any other you're eligible for, such as environmental parts, maximizing dropout prevention, operational sharing, spending your categoricals first. Don't cut your special ed. Make sure that you're using up your special ed funds for the appropriate things, and advocate for supplemental state aid. This is always an ongoing issue for school districts. Continuing on the maximizing authority, you can look at shifting expenditures. This was something I found interesting in the presentation. Shifting expenditures to another fund has exactly the same impact as eliminating the general fund expenditure. So early retirement expenditure can go to management fund, technology, non-instructional software, energy conservation. This was something that was kind of interesting. Equipment breakdown and local government risk pool, so natural gas, so you can expedite in management, save to the general fund, so you can get that expenditure under management just by changing who your provider is for natural gas. So looking into those things could really help your general fund. Spending authority issues can get you closed. So if you're not careful, very few ways, if any, to increase spending authority. General fund expenditure reductions, sometimes that means cutting expenditures, sometimes it means finding a way to shift expenditures. Fund balance issues can be solved through cash reserve levy, general fund expenditure reductions. This is why the following are not the end of the world. Mid-year across the board, state aid reductions, underfunding of state aid, and property tax reductions. Again, I bring up the ISL, so humor me. This is why low or no state supplemental assistance, SSA, is a huge problem. It impacts our spending authority and can only be solved by reducing or shifting expenditures. These are my sources. I did some interviewing with my superintendent regarding this subject, and then borrowed some of the pictures and a little bit of information from the presentation by Piper Jaffray and ISFIS Incorporated. I hope you did learn a little bit something about spending authority and funding balance. It seems a little bit clearer to me with the pictures and talking through the information. So I hope I brought some realization to concerns. Thank you.